On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, new co-host and goalie play is optional in Vancouver and Edmonton.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into the Tuesday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. We are your team every day. And we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On today's episode of Locked On NHL, we discuss the Western Conference playoffs. We'll talk Dallas, Colorado, as the Stars have pushed the Avs to the brink. We'll talk about Valeri Nichushkin and the news that came out just before the start of Game 4, with Nichushkin heading into the player assistance program again, and goalie play optional between Vancouver and Edmonton. My name is Seth Toupal, one half of the dynamic duo here on the Western Conference Tuesday edition of Locked On NHL. And as mentioned, new co-host alert, JD Young of Locked On Sharks will be stepping in and being part of the Tuesday show. What's happening, JD? Glad to have you on the Tuesday show and looking forward to what should be plenty of fun here on a weekly basis.
Yeah, watching Western Conference playoffs, I forgot what good hockey looks like. So it's been a joy to watch playoff hockey. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know we've had plenty of crossovers and always have a blast. So why not make this a weekly thing, right?
Always in favor of as much fun as possible. So we're definitely going to vibe out and have a good time with it. Although, if you're the Colorado Avalanche, you are not having a good time right now, as the Avs have been pushed to the brink. They are trailing now 3-1 to the Dallas Stars, as Dallas beat them 5-1 in Game 4. And, there's a lot of good going on for the Dallas Stars. But how about we start with Wyatt Johnston, who scored twice in this game. He's got 10 goals in the postseason so far. He's just a young player that is stepping into the spotlight and really owning it for the Dallas Stars here this season. And he's been a lot of fun to watch. He's taken the lead, and it was something that we've talked about on this show quite a bit, JD, is Dallas just needed somebody to kind of say, all right, guys, hop on my back. I got you. And Johnston has done that. He's been phenomenal in these playoffs so far.
Yeah, I mean, you are looking at the beginning of a budding superstar's career right here, the way he is playing. Because, right, it's always what you do in the playoffs is kind of where you etch those memories in. And Dallas is the team that successfully pulled off the retool, right? How many teams we're going to retool? We feel like we have a good core. Dallas has successfully done it. You still have all your old mainstays like Ben and Pavelski and such, but then these young kids like Johnston, I know Logan Stakoven really hasn't had the playoffs that we've seen, maybe expected out of him, but they've done it. They've done the retool, and Wyatt Johnston is just going to be the next great Dallas Stars player. And it's crazy. He's 20, 21, and you're going to be having to deal with this for the next 10 plus years if you are a fan of a Central Division team such as yourself. But it's crazy where the spotlight just does not look too big for him. It doesn't matter the situation tonight. Shorthand. How many teams put out 20-year-old kids on the shorthand, like on the penalty kill? And Dallas, Pete DeBoer famously loves his veterans. It doesn't matter. Wyatt Johnston is going to be a superstar.
Yeah, he just is showing all the signs, and it's crazy that he was the third line center for Dallas this year. He was their only 30 goal scorer. He just every box. He just checks every single box. And you look at his log for tonight's game, the 5-1 win. 2 goals, an assist. He had 8 shots on goal in 20 minutes of ice time. That 20 minutes of ice time, by the way, led all Dallas forwards. And he played on the power play. He played on the penalty kill. He was just all over the place. And like you look at all of the players that had contributions in this game. Evgeny Dadonov had a goal. Sam Steele had a 2-point night. Miro Heiskanen had a 3-point night. Like they're getting the depth scoring, and they're getting all those depth contributions. That is something that Colorado just is not able to match.
Yeah, and the crazy thing with Dallas is like it doesn't even feel like they're even playing that well a lot of times. Like Joe Pavelski, they've mentioned on the broadcast several times tonight, still doesn't have a goal. And how many times have we seen Joe Pavelski score big goals in big moments throughout his career? It's just like it feels, like that this team still has another level to go, which is scary because they were about 20 minutes away from sweeping Colorado. If you go back to game 1 where they had a huge lead, they blew that game. We could be talking about how Dallas just swept through Colorado tonight because of just the way they're playing, and they're getting, like you said, contributions from everybody. But like I said, it still feels like they have another level to go. And Jake Ottinger's been playing well, but we haven't seen like superstar Jake Ottinger where he's potentially single-handedly stealing games himself. So it's crazy to think that this team is just going to kind of continually roll through the Western Conference, and what we all probably expect to be a 7-game series against Colorado.
Yeah, it has started to really tilt, and you kind of knew that Dallas was going to be able to take firm footing in this series when they went into Colorado and just thoroughly took care of business. Colorado had one of the best records at home of any team this year. They were, I think it was 31-9, essentially was their home record. And Dallas just
doesn't matter.
Yeah, they just wrecked them in their own building. And you look at what was such a big concern in the first game of the postseason against Winnipeg was Alexander Georgiev's performance. But he righted the ship against the Jets, and he was able to hang on for the win against the Dallas Stars in game 1. But ever since, he's given up 4 goals in 2 of the 3 losses. In the one, there were a couple of empty netters, but he has not been as sharp as Colorado needs him to be. But JD, the thing that was so concerning for me in game 4 was the fact that at one point the shot totals were like 15-2 in favor of Dallas. And I know there was a lot that was kind of a distracting factor for Colorado before the game even started, but you got to really have some things go right for you if you're going to be behind in the shot department by 13 and expect to come away with a win.
They went full Sharks, and you never go full Sharks in that department. I think I saw it was like 22-4 at some, I think early second period or something like that. But it's and that's a kind of a trend we've seen from Colorado all playoffs long. It's just ridiculously slow starts, right? Where they just basically take the first 20 minutes off of the game, and then you hope McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar are able to drag you back into this game because you go, all gas, no breaks at the end of the game. And it's worked for them until you face a deep team like Dallas who can roll out, 4 solid lines. We saw their defense, especially against the Vegas series, where that series was a tight, like whoever makes a mistake is going to pay. They're bringing that same attitude to Colorado, and Colorado, they just don't have any room to operate because of the way Dallas's structure is and just how their system that works. And again, just how deep they are. And again, they're still not even getting production from their top guys. So that's the scary thing about Dallas.
Yeah. If they start to get a Robertson heater or a return to form for Pavelski. Now, the one scary thing for Dallas was that Rupe Hintz exited after only logging 6 minutes. He sustained an injury in the first period and did not return, but this is where the Dallas depth comes into play. Is Wyatt Johnston is on such a heater right now that if Rupe Hintz is going to miss time, you can just move him up in the lineup and he probably would benefit from additional time. So it feels like one instance in which Dallas is able to cover that spot in the lineup, but it's unfortunate, as we alluded to, for Colorado, because they had some things going on before the game started that obviously were a bit of a distraction. And so we will transition from the series to the events that unfolded before the game, as Valeri Nichushkin has been put in stage 3 of the NHL player assistance program. We'll talk about what stage 3 entails, what this means for Nichushkin's future with the Avs. That's on the way as we continue today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast after this. Today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, it is winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. JD, did you know right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. All you have to do is pick a team, whether it be Edmonton or Vancouver.
The Dallas Stars.
The Dallas Stars. You pick one team, put a $5 bet on their game. If they win, you got $150 that you can throw on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. My favorite thing to do now in Minnesota, still can't gamble yet. But what you can do if you're in a state where you can is just throw that $5 bet down. You are freewheeling for the rest of the week. For more details, head to FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Once again, we are your team every day, and we encourage you to stick with Locked On NHL throughout the week. We have a full panel of hosts talking all things NHL, whether it be at-large NHL on Monday, Western Conference Tuesday, Eastern Conference Wednesday, Power Rankings on Thursday, or more at-large NHL coverage on Friday. Locked On NHL has you covered every single day of the week. Seth Toupal and JD Young holding it down here on Western Conference Tuesday. All right, JD, let's get into what happened before the game. Colorado Avalanche, about 3 hours before the game, found out that Valeri Nichushkin was placed in stage 3 of the NHL and NHLPA player assistance program. According to multiple reporters throughout the league, Nichushkin is going to be suspended for a minimum of 6 months without pay and is eligible for reinstatement after that point. First things first, obviously this is a tough situation for Nichushkin. He's been in the player assistance program before, but it's very clear at this point that something is up. And so the first thing that you look at is the health and the well-being of the person first and foremost. And this is why this program exists, is to offer assistance to players that need it. Now, having said that, with there being a suspension involved, that obviously means there's something more serious going on here than the initial time, for sure.
Yeah, and that's the first thing, right? Is you want Nichushkin to get healthy, and whatever demons or whatever he's facing right now, that's the first thing. Is hopefully he can get the help that he needs to get it, kind of get things back on track and watch, hopefully one day be able to play hockey again, because he's a wonderful player to watch play hockey, right? If you think about their cup run a couple of years ago, which is how massive he was in that run for them. But it's again, like that's what this program's here for. You've seen players being able to kind of come in and come out of it. You think like Shellington from Calgary, who has spent a year kind of dealing with whatever he was dealing. But yeah, this is huge news for Dallas, who again already on the brink, and then. They're without Landeskog the entire season this year. You're hoping that he's able to come back next year, but again, just a kind of another thing that that Colorado is going to have to deal with, this offseason and questions going into next season for them.
Yeah, and it's tough hearing it before the game. Like you could tell that Colorado just they looked off. And so obviously this weighed heavily on them, but not only are there questions the rest of this season, there are going to be questions beyond, because one of the things that I'm pulling away from this, I did not know there were levels to the player assistance program. And so let's just roll those out. According to ESPN, Ryan S. Clark on ESPN lays out exactly what those stages are. A league source told ESPN that the player assistance program has 4 stages. Stage 1 is the first inpatient treatment for which there is no penalty. Under stage 2, which follows a violation of the stage 1 treatment plan, a player can be suspended without pay during the active phase of treatment and then become eligible for reinstatement. So stage 3 then follows a violation of the stage 2 treatment plan. That carries a suspension without pay for at least 6 months, at which point a player can become eligible for reinstatement. Stage 4, after a violation of the stage 3 treatment plan, carries a suspension of at least 1 year, and reinstatement at that point is not assured. And the Nichushkin timeline, this is his 3rd absence in the past 13 months from the team. Most recent was in mid-January when he was admitted into the player assistance program for undisclosed reasons. At the time of his absence, it was announced that he would be out for an indefinite period. And so that, we're not gonna speculate as to what is happening, but you can assume from that would have been stage 2. And so this now is obviously where stage 3 comes into play, but this is not a good situation for the Avs, for Nichushkin. And so the hope that he gets the help that he needs, because you hate to see anybody put in any sort of situation like this.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I'm sure he's, like you said, teammates finding out. I'm sure they probably found out, a little bit beforehand, but still, like, you're prepping for one of the biggest games of the season, and then this kind of drops on you, and just kind of that, like, reality of a person, of having to kind of deal with this. And, one of your friends, colleagues, coworkers is going through something that they've struggled with, it sounds like for a while now. And they're not going to be around to kind of, a lot of people, not guys, but a lot of people, maybe they throw themselves in their work to try to, move through things, and it feels like for Nichushkin, like this is he's not able to do that right now because he's suspended. So but yeah, it's a tough situation. You hope he gets the help he needs, and it's going to be a big storyline for Colorado, I think, going into this off season of, okay, you're going to have Landeskog, who's hopefully coming back from his injury, but right, you never know if he's ever going to be 100% Landeskog again. The Nichushkin thing, like, how does this team, which is still kind of in its cup window, how do they kind of go from here, especially if they're, they lose in either 5 or 6 games to Dallas like we expect?
Yeah, there are going to be some big questions, because just the nature of how the Avs put their roster together. I think their entire bottom 6 is all free agents. And so with not a lot of cap space, there are going to have to be some decisions made on the future of many members of the Avs. So we'll keep an eye on that, obviously, throughout the rest of the postseason. But there is another series that is currently going on, a suspension from the events of Vancouver and Edmonton. We'll talk about all the goals, all the lack of saves, all that's coming up as we finish today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast after this.
If getting life insurance is on your to-do list, you need to check out Policygenius. It's the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide for your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help you talk you through it. The great thing about them is that they have no incentive to recommend one insurer over the other, so you can trust their guidance. They're there to try to make sure they find the right policy for you. Thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL.
We back for one final segment of today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Once again, we are your team every day. Seth Toupal and JD Young holding it down as I hold off a sneeze as we get to the final segment here of today's show. And JD, let's talk a little Vancouver and Edmonton, because there was some rough stuff in the most recent game. Carson Soucy getting suspended for one game for his cross check on Connor McDavid. I'm watching the replay literally as we speak, and I think it's pretty definitive. And I always go this route when these types of things happen, is whether or not there was anything that led to Carson Soucy retaliating to the point that he cross-checked.
You can't do it.
Player safety doesn't care. Like they don't care if you were provoked. They don't care who poked the bear harder. The fact that Carson Soucy just unloads a cross-check right into Connor McDavid's grill.
Yeah.
That's the punishable offense. And so it was a very deserved one-game suspension for Carson Soucy. And it comes at a critical time in the series, although Vancouver has really started to gain their footing here. And it's crazy considering all the goalie injuries that they have sustained. It has been the Brock Besser show, though, here over the last couple of games. He's been unreal. He had the hat trick. And much like we talked about Wyatt Johnston stepping up and taking the lead, Brock Besser has done the same for the Vancouver Canucks here as they start to try to pull away from Edmonton.
Yeah, you've been kind of waiting for guys like, Pettersson to really make their mark, and and Hughes and stuff. But yeah, Brock Besser, who I've seen he's a notorious shark killer, constantly scoring a ton of goals against the Sharks. But he seems to kind of have that clutch gene that I know the Canucks have lacked for a lot of their franchise's history, is finding that kind of clutch moments for them. But I know you mentioned no goal or goalie's optional. How could you not give it up to Archer Silvias, who has come out of nowhere, stolen our hearts, stolen games from the Edmonton Oilers? And if the Sharks were on their third goalie, I would basically be out there at this point, because how do these teams keep getting away with this, just having ridiculous goalie depth? It's not fair. I want a good goalie once, but no, it's like this scrappy. I don't know why they were one of the best teams they won the Pacific, one of the best teams, but I still find this Canucks team such like a scrappy underdog story. just because of what they've gone through, the past kind of 5, 6, 7 years of this franchise, and seeing these guys kind of all get together and really kind of pull through it. And like you mentioned, just all the goalie injuries, guys just kind of getting, kind of just starting to try to figure things out here. But back to the cross check, I went on a random tangent there. Well deserved. Like you said, it's always who was the last guy to do it, right? If Connor McDavid got cross-checked and then Connor McDavid turned around and speared him, then we'd be talking about the Connor McDavid suspension, which would be something different. But yeah, this Canucks team, I'm rooting for them. I'm excited for them. It's a kind of a kinship between Sharks and Canucks because of just always being the bridesmaids, always kind of the lovable losers, and I'm excited for this Canucks team.
Well, and you mentioned the performance of Artur Silovs, and 42 out of 45 in the win against Edmonton to put them up 2-1 was just unreal. And it feels like Vancouver is kind of rallied around him. Like they know he's at this point not going to be able to give them what Thatcher Demko was giving the Canucks, what Casey DeSmith was giving the Canucks. But it seems like Vancouver has adjusted their game accordingly, and they're playing as if they know we're going to have to push the pace offensively, because you're not gonna have like a 2-1 game. You're not gonna have maybe a 3-2 game, but Vancouver they seem comfortable playing at that style, and it's something too where as he gets more starts, as the team continues to win with him in the net, that just builds confidence. And so then you get to maybe you get to the next round and you're going up against the Dallas Stars. Maybe he starts to really steal some games. And that then is where a team truly believes that they are unbeatable, when you get a young goalie that gets just a little bit of confidence and can then carry that into the biggest moments.
Yeah, and I think too, like you mentioned, the way that they've been playing, right? They've been kind of getting onto leads here, and they're not just putting their, kind of parking the bus here because they know they don't have the ability to just park the bus and know, like, our goalie is going to save the day no matter what. And they push the pace. And you look at the end of that second period, right? When it was 3-2, Edmonton was really, kind of finding their way back into this game. And then they get a huge goal from Elias Lindholm on the power play, and especially against this Edmonton power play, which is just on an absolute fire right now, this playoff series. And anytime Edmonton gets a power play, it feels inevitable they're going to score a goal. But having that, especially at the end of the second period, giving yourself a little bit of that, a 2-goal cushion, and then you're just hoping to kind of survive that whole third period. We'll see if it can kind of continue. But, I think for Edmonton's side, like, they've been playing well. The power play's been playing well, but we haven't gotten that like McDavid game, right? And I'm expecting that they're like, oh yeah, that's Connor McDavid, and I'm going to put up like 4 points tonight, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you wonder if we know how Vancouver's got a lot of guys who can score, Besser, JT Miller, PD, like they have a ton of guys who score, but if McDavid just decides I'm going to put on the Superman cape tonight and just do McDavid things, can they win like a 6-7 type of game?
They're going to have to. You look at McDavid's performances in the 3 games so far. In game 2, which they won 4-3 in overtime, he had 4 points, goal, 3 assists. So he obviously had the kind of the takeover game there. But in the other 2 games, he has 1 combined point and 4 combined shots. And so it's not to say like that he hasn't been contributing for sure, but like it's just a situation where anytime you get to the postseason, your top guys gotta be your top guys. Like you gotta have that big dog performance from Nathan MacKinnon, from Connor McDavid. Nathan McKinnon's doing fine. You gotta have those big Connor McDavid performances. And if he can replicate what he did in game 2, that'll help Edmonton try to even the series. But if not, Vancouver might be able to push this to 3-1.
3-1 heading home back to Vancouver. And that place is going to be bonkers. Especially if they have a chance to close things out on home ice, that place is going to be absolutely bananas.
It would behoove the Oilers to try to help Stuart Skinner out a little bit more too. He's given up 4 goals in 2 out of the last 3 games. But that was always the story. That was always going to be the story with the Oilers going into the postseason is their goaltending going to be enough? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. But big dogs got to eat. That's my main takeaway from this series is that those big dogs got to eat. If they do, Edmonton still has a shot. They still have a shot to win that series.
You have 2 of the 5 best players in the NHL with Draisaitl and McDavid. You're gonna have a chance every night, but it's very much who can help out. Like on any given night, who can help out, and can Stuart Skinner, revert to what we saw before the playoffs last season, where he was one of the biggest stories, and then he kind of turned into a pumpkin. And this year, we know the goaltending woes of the Edmonton Oilers, but it's can you get a save at some point from the Oilers? But until they can figure out this goaltending, I think we're just going to continually get the same story out of Edmonton. It's just, a lot of question marks.
More than a few. We will obviously keep you posted on those series. It may be, depending on how things play out, that we have the Western Conference Finals to discuss next week. It'll probably be that we're winding down both of these series. So either way, Western Conference Tuesday has you covered every week here on Locked On NHL. That is going to wrap it up here for today's episode. So if you want a little more intel on the Minnesota Wilds, make sure to follow Locked On Wild. If you want more intel on the Sharks, make sure to follow JD at Locked On Sharks. Make sure to also follow along with Locked On NHL throughout the week, keeping you up to date on the biggest NHL stories every day of the week. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.